Hi, everyone. I'm DeFi Dad. You're watching episode 26 of Yield TV. Okay, welcome, everyone. It's November 3rd, 2020. I am honored here today to interview Michael Egorov from Curve Finance. So, Michael, welcome to Yield TV. How are you doing?
Hi, good.
Awesome. So just some quick background. If you somehow have never used Curve Finance and you work in the DeFi space or use DeFi, Curve is, I believe at this point, the top stablecoin liquidity pool in the world. They've had upwards of $1.5 billion, I think, in liquidity, throughout the last 6 months. And yeah, generally it's an application in DeFi, the ability to be able to swap between stable coins, the ability to provide liquidity and earn market making fees, but also the ability to even tokenize Bitcoin using the Ren bridge and then provide liquidity and swap between tokenized Bitcoin. This is utility that for me, once I tried it, it was impossible to not continue to use it. So it's really, again, just great to get to talk to you, Michael, especially with how much I've gotten to use Curve. So today, what we'll end up talking through is, Michael's journey building Curve, but we'll also talk a bit more about some of the newer updates to Curve, also how governance works today, but also I think some of the lessons that Michael can share as one of the few people in the world that's launched a governance token related to DeFi. So, Michael, do you want to start us off with maybe talk to us a little bit about your background? And I'm curious how you got the idea to build Curve.
Right, yeah. So my background is originally a physicist background. So I did a PhD in physics. PhD was in Australia. Before that, I studied in Moscow. And after that, I thought to do some startup, didn't know which. So I went to the US, to California. And at about the same time, I first learned about cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, whatever. Anyway, so in the US, I worked at LinkedIn a little bit. Then I founded a company called NewsCypher, which some may know. And while doing NewsCypher, I actually become a DeFi user, starting with MakerDAO.
Oh wow!
So right, and when using that, I was kind of always had this problem for swapping stablecoins between each other because, for example, on Coinbase, you can quickly deposit and withdraw USDC, and you have DAI on the other side. And yes, Coinbase has DAI to USDC liquidity, but it didn't really look very good. And at the same time, there were two other things. One thing I was thinking about what is now called liquid staking. In other words, how you can stake something, like say, stake ETH 2.0 or stake NewsCypher, and how you can have it while stake, how can you have it liquid? So it kind of required some good market making algorithm between staked and unstaked assets. And at the same time, I was playing a little bit with trading bots with some friend of mine, and there were some interesting ideas which came from there. And I think a little bit inspired by those ideas, I came up with an algorithm for bonding curve, which is good for both staked assets and for stablecoins. In January, I launched Curve with that, and it appeared that.
Is that the bonding curve that continues to power a lot of the pools? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is that bonding curve. The trick about this bonding curve is that, well, if you explain it simply, what it does it actually concentrates most of liquidity around the target price, 1.0, whereas in other places it's a bit less liquidity, and this transition is smooth. So yeah, that's kind of what it does, and you can adjust how tightly this liquidity is concentrated, and that basically makes it suitable for one or other stablecoins.
Yeah, I remember when I first looked at the first pool you launched, I remember just recognizing right away, like, oh, cool, this thing is incentivizing me to provide the token that's, I wanted to say was like more in need. It was DAI at the time versus, it was like really one of the first times like I had recognized it was very clear to me as a user, because it was, it was giving me, I would get a better swap rate, or I would earn more of, I would earn a larger share of the liquidity pool.
Right. Well, I mean, that's a feature you would have with pretty much any bonding curve, even Uniswaps, although the effect would be like much less noticeable there.
Yep. Yeah. What do you think about your background in physics drew you to cryptocurrency and DeFi? I have a background in chemistry. I started a chemistry PhD, but I quit it. And I've met so many people who have either finished the PhD or at least were in it for a few years, like me.
Right.
And anyways, like what about the physical sciences drew you to cryptocurrency?
Yeah, I think that's like there is definitely some relevancy, like they're working with abstractions and developing intuition to work with abstractions. For example, with bonding curves, you basically write some invariant, and in theoretical mechanics, you also write invariants, or in theoretical physics, you write Hamiltonians. So here the task was to come up with some invariant which does something which is needed. And I mean, you sometimes do have that in physics, and also there is kind of a lot of intuition needed here. So if you are like, I mean, you can do that if you are a pure mathematician as well, but usually sciences like physics or chemistry, they require developing an intuition, and like I'm not necessarily physics and intuition. You can develop it in any abstraction. So yeah.
Michael, maybe we can go more basic for just a moment, because then I want to talk a little bit more about the Metapools that you guys have launched. But can you explain, or maybe we could even show it, like how do the stablecoin pools work versus the tokenized Bitcoin pools, just for those that are totally new to Curve?
Right. Well, they actually work very similarly, because what stablecoins are, they are tokenized versions of US dollar on Ethereum, right? And Bitcoins, which we use, are also tokenized versions of Bitcoin on Ethereum. So what different stablecoins are to each other is about the same as what Bitcoins on Ethereum are to each other. They are kind of different, but they still represent the same unit. What's different is that with Bitcoins, because they are cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, sometimes you can have a method to directly deposit and withdraw it in UI. So that's what we use with RenBTC. There is a bridge between Bitcoin and RenBTC, which is made by them, and we basically integrated that. And we basically combined this bridge transaction, swap transaction in one, so you could basically convert Bitcoin to RenBTC and swap to RedBTC, for example, all in one Ethereum transaction. So that's kind of something which is a little bit hard with US dollar, because like the methods of depositing and withdrawing US dollar are more complicated, more real world, more regulated as well. So and with Bitcoin, it's a little bit simpler on that regard.
Yeah, I think that the Ren bridge, when you all implemented that, I feel like that really opened up doors to the large amount of liquidity we've seen flow into DeFi,
Right.
into tokenized Bitcoin.
Yeah, we've seen some Bitcoin maximalists starting using DeFi.
Yeah. I mean, Michael, before you guys launched that, I actually didn't have a clear route in mind of how would I take my Bitcoin and convert it into tokenized Bitcoin without going through like a centralized exchange, which I just wasn't as interested in going that route, even though I still maintain that centralized exchange relationship for
Right.
fiat. But yeah, I mean, gosh, we're at now $2 billion in Bitcoin on Ethereum, and that's 150,000 Bitcoin. And for anyone that's not tried this, like if you go to Curve, you have a number of pools where it's all the tokenized Bitcoin pools. And I mean, it's really easy. Like all you have to do is just follow the instructions and, check a few boxes and send your Bitcoin to the address that the Ren bridge provides.
I cannot wait until we integrate TBTC to UI as well. Then you can swap between real Bitcoin and real Bitcoin. I don't know why though.
That's exciting. I didn't realize that wasn't.
Yeah, I mean they can. It's just I think it's probably better, like a better way for like really big whales, because their Ethereum transaction cost is higher there. But like, well, yeah, there's something to do soon as well.
Michael, can you walk us through what are the Metapools and what's the utility of them? Why did you launch them?
Yep. Well, first of all, I need to say about standard pools on Curve, and those pools they basically in equilibrium they have all the coins which are in the pool in equal proportion. So let's say if price is 1.0, then pool with I don't know DAI US dollar and DAI USDC and USDT would be like third, and the third, right? And yeah, with Metapools, you actually if you let's see.
Yeah, so I just pulled
if you just press there the swap wrapped thing.
Oh yeah, you mean this here?
No. The swap wrapped, it's like the second checkbox.
Oh yeah, you mean this right here?
No. Down there, like there is infinite approval and swap wrapped after this.
Oh, there we go.
Like no, yeah, just swap wrapped. Okay.
There we go.
No. That's not this pool. Sorry.
I got it. Yeah. Let's go to which pool should I go to?
Let's go to, let's say, I don't know, GUSD.
GUSD. Here we go.
Yeah, GUSD. Yeah. And if you press swap wrapped here, okay, good. Right. So this is what is in a Metapool under the hood. You swap between some stablecoin and a liquidity provider token of another pool. So you can basically turn some stablecoin into a deposit in that pool or back, right? That's under the hood. But as soon as you have an LP token of that pool, you can withdraw any of the coins which are in that pool from that. So if you uncheck the swap wrapped, right?
Oh, here we go.
Yep. Yeah, then it appears that you can, by doing that, you can swap between GUSD and DAI USDC or USDT. And you obviously can ask why would you do that, right? And the reason is that if you do that, then half of liquidity of this pool or thereabouts, half on average, lives in 3 pool. So it makes liquidity in that other pool, which is kind of supporting the stablecoins where most liquidity is needed. At the same time, it makes it this pool for GUSD exchanges as efficient as if you had 3 pools, GUSD DAI, GUSD USDC, and GUSD USDT. So you can, by basically having the same amount of 3 pool tokens, you could enable all these 3 pools as if you had 3 times more pools.
Interesting. Yeah.
So basically, you make higher liquidity by having less.
Yeah, yeah. You're like it's like Inception, but for liquidity pools, like combining all of them together. No, really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And then, Michael, just to sum up, who is this most ideal for? My interpretation of it is that if I'm a liquidity provider, this is the most powerful for me, but also if I'm trading stablecoin.
Yeah, for traders, it's Metapools are really great because
get a better rate.
Because like you, well, I mean, if pool has some amount of liquidity, you get actually less slippage at the same amount of liquidity as if it was not a Metapool. And really, it's good for those who introduce those stable coins in Curve pools because they don't need that much liquidity to actually have like a good market for it.
So would it make more sense if I'm wanting to put stable coins and into a liquidity pool, would it make more sense for me just to add it to the 3 pool versus any of the individual pools?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, yes. But so theoretically, you would earn a little bit of fees when you use any Metapool in 3 pool as well. But also 3 pool has no lending because we want it to be like gas cheap. And yeah, after all, I think you will be guided by several things such as which yields you are getting, as well as how safe are the coins in the pool. So 3 pool is good in regards of like having only 3 coins you are exposed to. So if you are comfortable with USDT, you can, that's a reasonably safe pool because it also doesn't have composability risks. But whether it's how it is with returns, that's, I think, well, it's kind of shown, I guess, on the front page too.
Yeah, that, okay, thank you.
It's always like risk-reward, some risk-reward balance. And I think, like, at least what I think should happen, and I think that happens, if you have more risky pools, maybe people are not always comfortable to go there. And if there are less deposits there with the same curve incentives going in, then you may have a higher returns there, and basically higher returns correspond to higher risk. So that's kind of probably a fair deal, which is achieved automatically.
So we covered the tokenized Bitcoin pools. We have stablecoin pools. We have these new meta pools. One thing that I think about in terms of like assets is Ether, like synthetic Ether is one example.
Yes.
Is that coming, or is?
Yes, it is. It is. We have this audit of that going on right now, and we are not going the wrapped Ether route because it's more gas and like really it's a little bit easier to write, but then you have to wrap and unwrap Ether and let user pay for that. So that's not great. So we've made it so that you do it with real Ether, but of course then it's a little bit more complex, so requires another audit.
Michael, what is the long-term vision for Curve? Because I look at like what you all have built in just the last year, and it's overwhelming to me. There's so many different innovations just in the way you've created the pools, and I never anticipated that. I thought when you all had gotten to like 3 or 4 pools, I was like, oh, cool, we'll focus on some synthetic Ether pool, and we'll have our tokenized Bitcoin pool. So I'm just curious, like, if you can share more about like what's the future you see with DeFi, and what more are you excited to build with Curve? Right.
So there are a few things which can be potentially built in DeFi, and just in general, I think one thing is crypto liquidity market making is probably not yet very efficient on chain. Of course, like with Uniswap and with Balancer, we have about similar efficiency, although Balancer can support more than 2 assets and different proportions, but the efficiency of the algorithm is about the same as Uniswap's. And I think there are some more things which could be fundamentally done with cryptocurrency market making. So I think that has to happen in DeFi. I mean, to some degree, that does start happening with Bancor V2 or Dodo, but that's although like those use something like similar to what Curve does with stablecoins, but around some price point which is given by an oracle. So you kind of rely on an oracle, and that's a tough one because you would need to kind of to worry about front-running attacks, like somebody who knows that the price changed, but Oracle didn't change that yet. You can create a trade and profit from that, and basically draining a little bit of profit from, or draining a little bit of money from liquidity pool. So in principle, that is vulnerable, and it's hard to make it not vulnerable. The same problem Synthetics had, and they had, I think, some loss caused by that. And after that, they introduced the fee reclamation mechanism when basically one doesn't have a balance fully settled after exchange, which is based on an oracle. That kind of balance fully settles after like 2 minutes or something, and before then the asset is non-transferable. So in that setting, it does become safe. But then you still rely on price oracle. So these methods could never ever become the primary price sources for crypto. And I believe that there could be algorithms to do this market making effectively without relying on price oracles for cryptos. And I think that will happen at some point in DeFi. Another thing is, obviously, there are foreign exchange markets, and they don't change like as drastically as crypto markets, but nevertheless, their price doesn't return to 1.0. They kind of diverge, and that's something to probably look at as well. And also, the original motivation for Curve was taking derivatives, and that Curve still applies to them really, really well. So like this, let's say Rocket Pool for Ethereum, or like any other pools for staking, they can be tokenized and can be made liquid, and Curve is really probably the best venue to create liquidity for those. And also another thing, which I don't know if it works or not, but I think there could be something to do with L2s for Ethereum as well as other chains. Let's say maybe let's say with L2 on Ethereum, imagine you transfer some ethers in or out, and you really want to, and it really takes time to deposit and withdraw, and let's say you really want to have it right at that moment on L2 or off L2. What if there is a pool which creates a liquidity between, let's say, settled and unsettled token on L2, and then let's say this pool does take the risk of this like settling procedure, but at the same time somebody else pays the pool for taking away this risk and using the token right away. So that could be something which can be used for composability with L2s.
Wow. So, you definitely got my brain thinking now on like, there's so many derivatives and possibilities for what pools you can still build. That's I'm surprised. I've never thought of it that way either, but it makes a lot more sense to me now. Like even with like the rocket pool ether, like there's yet another form of ether that will need liquidity supported
Right.
out.
It's just like lending. Like let's say you lend ETH to, I don't know, to Aave or Compound, and you get A ETH or C ETH, and let's say C ETH grows up in value, and let's say over there you stake ETH and it grows up in value that way. But for Curve, it doesn't matter how it grows up in value. You can know like what is actually amount of ether represented by it. Well, the trick with ETH 2.0 though, if you stake it, you cannot unstake it before stage whatever. So it will stay that way for like, I don't know, weeks, not months or something.
Michael, how do you all think about smart contract safety? One of the things that we all take for granted is when you don't experience a smart contract bug with an application. Now, people are ready to pull out the pitchforks as soon as something goes wrong. But
Right.
I'm not even. You'd have to remind me. Like I thought you all had like some sort of bug right when you first launced. But
That's
track record since then. So, anyways, how do you all think about this?
Yeah, so that's I would say we do everything to try to find these bugs. So obviously unit testing should be done, but unit testing is not enough because unit testing doesn't use smart contracts in the ways you don't expect. So what really should also be done, and we have started doing that, is fuzzing or stateful testing, where you could, let's say, randomly like go along random paths how you do the calls, and let's see where the state ends up, and at the same time you observe for things which let's say should never happen. And for Curve, there are some things which are very strictly defined about what should never happen. So one of these things is like the invariant or like specific invariant, which we call virtual price. It should never drop unless you change the parameters of the pool. And so with the you could automatically observe for these things while doing some fuzzing or whatever, and seeing if the testing framework randomly comes up with combinations where this whatever you defined as something which should never be violated, and it is violated. And I don't know like how about Curve, but like let's say for Harvest or Yearn, I think that would definitely help to like the recent bugs they had. They probably would have been discovered this way. And of course, audits are important. Many auditors do fuzzing as well. So if you don't, some good auditors will likely do that.
Yeah.
But auditors are not necessarily enough. So I did find some minor bugs which don't really lead to a loss of funds, but which auditors missed, and they would, if they saw, they definitely would kind of mark those as like pretty noticeable. So auditors don't necessarily notice everything, and nobody should rely on auditors as being a stamp of approval. So it's just kind of if the contracts were audited, that increases that probably increases safety, but it's not increasing safety to 100%. So probably everyone should be like monitoring what's happening in smart contracts, as well as trying to attack your own contracts. Actually, there was one other thing which, apart from the very early bug, there was the very first SUSD pool was apparently a Metapool, and it existed since March till April, since like middle of March till middle of April. And in April, we found exactly like violation of this property, virtual price can go down in some calls where like it shouldn't have happened. These calls were never called from UI, but they could be called manually, and we ourselves did call them manually. And apparently we found this exactly when this what was it, D-Force hack happened.
Oh, like, yeah. Yep.
Exactly. So it was actually a crazy. These were crazy weekends because in BTC Uniswap pool was drained, D-Force was hacked, and we couldn't really do anything else than hacking ourselves. And what can be better than hacking our curve pools? So we tried, and we found that there was apparently something, some problem missed, but fortunately it was all possible to still shut this pool down, which is makes only withdrawals allowed and let people migrate all the liquidity safely. So that happened, and it was all done reasonably well, and yeah, nobody lost anything. Except for one of us hacking the other of us for 1 cent.
Oh gosh, that's good. Yeah, I know. There's still a lot of risk. We're in the early days of Ethereum and DeFi, and I think there's times where we hear that argument of you have to be prepared and ready that you could lose value in any application. But at the same time, like, we have times where we all sort of take for granted the fact that we haven't experienced a bug. So I don't know. I think just the last 6 months provides lots of lessons. Like I try to limit my exposure to any one platform just because it goes beyond like exposure to an asset. It's exposure to will I be able to continue with my life? And
right. Well, I mean, you also have to think about composability risks, because if you have multiple applications stacked on top of each other, then your risks may increase.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we talk then more about the Curve governance token that you all launched this summer? I want to talk about what it means to lock it up, to have this vesting curve, basically all the incentives involved in that.
Right.
And then I guess as we cover that, just being mindful, there were some questions in the live stream here just about the fact that in light of the tokenomics, in light of like how you can lock it up, just how you all are thinking as a team about the Curve token's value. I think that basically summarizes the question here. Just it basically says that the Curve token has suffered while I guess the rest of the DeFi markets have drawn down. And how do you think about that in light of all of the incentives that you all have designed?
Right. Yeah, well, not all of the incentives are up yet. Well, not all of the things. But the idea is that the main purpose of this token is governance token. And with governance, you, if you apply adversarial thinking to that, if we just made one token, one vote, one could be able to vote for a malicious change and leave, and that's not necessarily great. It could be all right if ownership over tokens was very centralized, but it's not so much centralized. And with that, it's we need to do better than just one token, one vote. And what we came up with is a vote locking. So you basically vote lock tokens in voting escrow, and you have voting power, which diminishes over time as you are closer to unlock. So basically, if you lock one CRV for 4 years, then you have voting power of one VE CRV. So VE CRV is not vested CRV, it's vote lock escrowed CRV. Basically, if you have the same one CRV but locked for 2 years, then the voting power is half of VE CRV and so on. So let's say if you
4 years gets you 1 full vote for locking it.
Yeah.
2 years gets you half. I never realized that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Apparently, it's like, let's say, imagine that you want to, I don't know, to hurt the platform. So you want to vote and leave. If you lock a bunch of tokens for 1 week, you have actually pretty small voting power, because if you locked them for, let's say, 4 years, you would have had much more. Yeah, this is the graph, but it's a little bit not non-linear because the scale is non-linear. But yeah, it's voting power diminishes over time. And let's say if you vote locked for 4 years, then you have vested interest in not hurting the value of this curve token for 4 years, and you probably would think what your decisions are doing in the long term.
I never realized this. This is really interesting. Okay, so when you look at like some of the other numbers to call out here, you need at least 2,500 VCRV to create a proposal. So someone needs 2,500 curve locked up for at least 4 years, which I think is a pretty low threshold.
Yes, it is. It is a pretty low threshold, and I don't think we observe much of a noise with this low threshold. So we do have some proposals which are kind of, which sometimes look a little bit uninformed, sometimes look a little bit silly, but not many. So mostly, and we do see some like real governance proposals, like executive governance proposals created by people without our involvement with this like minimal amount. And I think, like, for example, what Uniswap does with, like, I don't know what it is, 10 million unis to create a proposal or whatever that is.
It's 40 million. It's
40 million. Okay. So with the, I think that's a little bit too much. So it's you don't really have to have millions of dollars to create a proposal. I think. And
I just never realized. That the VCRV correlates to, that it's that 4 versus 2 years. So, okay, so that's one thing we have covered here. Now the curve token, can you talk me through how does the gauge weighting work? Like that's something else that I don't know if the average person would be involved in this, but
that's a pretty interesting thing. Basically, you can, once the pools are in, you can vote for different pools to receive different fraction of curve inflation. So imagine that you voted for, I don't know, for what's your favorite pool, for Y pool, for example, right? And for, let's say, 3 pool, right? Then your the fraction of inflation which Y pool and 3 pool get will increase a little bit due to your vote, and everybody can vote. So so basically, users define how much inflation each pool is getting.
I get you. And I'm assuming this is because if we were to just say, well, whichever pool has the most volume, I would imagine like a large pool like the Y pool would just continue to grow, and you just wouldn't see that value being allocated to pools.
Yeah, I think ideally you would want to vote for pools which get higher liquidity utilization. Because let's say I've seen that with BUSD pool at some point. So at some point, BUSD pool was getting volumes per liquidity higher than Y pool, which meant that BUSD coin probably got some more traction than before. So and BUSD pool was voted on a little bit higher, and then after it goes higher, then this demand is satisfied and liquidity utilization goes down a little bit. So and basically it all kind of stops at like the right pool size pretty much. And there is another thing with some new coins introduced. They could be a little bit more risky, and at the same time, those who introduce those coins can want to incentivize those pools, so they may, let's say, apart from providing extra incentives, they could buy Curve tokens and basically wait vote over here.
Michael, how do you all think about the greater DeFi community in terms of what is a competitor versus a peer in the community? The reason I call this out is I thought it was really interesting when you all launched the MUSD pool, just because you know, at one point or another, I mean, MStable and Curve could be seen as competitors. At the same time, my take has always been that the pie is so huge for us to grow together, and we want more than.
Yeah, I think, you know, MUSD was kind of more useful as a stable coin by itself rather than a way to swap coins. Although swapping coins is sometimes useful over there too. So, and it seemed like it's actually good to introduce it as a Curve pool, just to be able, for people to be able to quickly get and go from MUSD. Well, first of all, without spending much gas on transactions, because minting MUSD is actually pretty expensive, and also doing that for let's say price reasons, because like the MUSD treats all coins at price 1.0, and not necessarily they always are, and there could be points when it's kind of you are kind of losing a little bit when you are minting MUSD. So, but when you introduce it on a free market, which doesn't peg it to doesn't keep it at 1.0, then it will be up to the market what the price is. So, and that looked really well, and causes sometimes quite a bit of arbitrage between you know, the withdrawing from MUSD itself and trading on Curve. So I think, and yeah, I think it's kind of, it works as a basket stablecoin. So why not?
Yeah. So to summarize, if I am participating in Curve as a liquidity provider, I can first off deposit liquidity into one of the pools. I can stake that in the DAO, and that's what entitles me to start earning the CRV, the Curve Governance Token. That's in real time, so you can claim that whenever. But you can then earn more by taking that and staking it in the locker. And the locker is what gives me the
No. You stake not liquidity in locker. You stake Curve tokens in locker.
That's what I mean. Yes, staking the Curve. So we're staking liquidity in Minter, I don't know, I think what we all commonly call the DAO, but then we're taking the actual Curve token to earn more of that, and that also entitles us to more voting power. That's really
and really, if you stake like the primary purpose for VECRV and for these locked Curve tokens is voting. But if it was only voting, would really many people lock tokens voluntarily? Probably not. So those tokens should bring you something. And they bring actually two things. One is they can amplify how much Curve tokens each pool produces. And another, which is kind of not yet fully launched, but soon, is distribution of part of trading fees to those who locked CRV.
That's super helpful. Yeah, no. Thank you for clarifying that. I've actually got another question from this person here. So they were asking, what are your thoughts on Synthetics' virtual synths idea?
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I think that was probably inspired by the Synthetics Bitcoin pool, because some people start using that to arbitrage. You could swap between Bitcoin and SBTC, and from SBTC you can transform to SUSD, and then SUSD can go to USD, and then you can like go wherever with that. And that kind of inspired the idea that you could actually use this route to swap between USD and Bitcoin, or USD and Ether when Ether versus ETH pool is up. So yeah, that's a good idea. And even before that is up, one can do that all manually. You could swap between let's say Bitcoin and SBTC, and then swap SBTC to SUSD at the Oracle price on the synthetics, and then you need to wait for 2 minutes and then swap it back on Curve to USD, and that can be all kind of automated in one transaction, but actually 2 transactions, because you also need to wait until everything settles on SUSD side, and you kind of before then you cannot really use the result.
Very cool. Yeah, it sounds like something that could be implemented then. I mean,
yeah, most definitely, and it's probably a very whale-friendly way of exchanging Bitcoins and US dollars, for example.
Absolutely. There were another few questions here, which they mainly relate back to curious about the future of CRV tokenomics, if there's anything else you can share. This other person I was alluding to earlier, he had some good questions just about going back to the tokenomics of CRV and how you think about where we are all today in light of all of these new incentives and
Yeah, I think like tokenomics of if you talk about, let's say, release schedule of the token, it's actually about the same as release schedule of Bitcoin, for example, because like in Bitcoin you have emissions falling by a factor of 2 every 4 years, and on Curve we have emissions dropping by a factor of let's say 2 to the power 1/4 every year, which is kind of the same, at least kind of the same result. The thing is that Bitcoin was relatively unknown when it launched, and Curve was a little bit too hyped, so that led to probably a little bit too much demand when liquidity was too small. But like I think right now, well, at least to me, it feels like equilibrating more or less. And other than that,
like coming back to a normal place. It was there for a while, and I think it's insane to think about the buildup that we all experienced, that you experienced to your own governance token launching, and how quickly I feel like people just we move on very quickly and are like, what's next? What are you going to give me that's next? Like this was huge. Right. What are you going to
actually one thing which, there are many things we need to do, but one thing we need to do, what we need to do with governance, at least what we experienced, is that it's pretty hard to get people voting. We probably do get more people voting than some other governance tokens have, but still, like it's tough. So there are a few things which need to be done. One is we need to make voting free, so like not spending gas, so that users don't spend gas. Otherwise, like what's the why would I vote? Spend my gas to I don't know. It's like even if I have some free time to think about it, and another is could be probably makes sense to even make votes a little bit incentivized, and also it could be good to enable some sort of delegation. So let's say, we had requests like that, like some users don't really want, voting for governance is quite a job, and not everyone wants to commit to that, but they could probably really delegate to someone. And but this at the same time shouldn't become something like everyone delegates to, I don't know, 3 influencers and they kind of can do whatever. So that's so it's so delegation makes some threat to decentralization in a way, but I think it needs to be done in some way. What I really want to see, I don't know if it's easy to implement, well, not easy, but if it's possible to implement, is liquid democracy. It's and what it is, imagine that I don't know, there is someone voting and somebody else delegates his votes to that guy, and somebody else delegates votes to this guy. And basically, if you do nothing, then you're basically whoever you delegate votes, or whoever he delegates votes for you. But if you vote, then your vote is counted, not the vote of your delegatee. And yeah, this is probably not exactly how elections work in the US, but
oh, they're very confusing. We like to, we hold elections, and then the popular vote we discard for whatever the electoral college is. So yeah, it should be interesting. Actually, it's funny, I just voted today, so will be an exciting day here to kind of watch what happens.
Yeah, should we have an NFT for those who vote in governance? I voted.
Absolutely. You know, I'm so excited one day for us to get past this idea that you have to go in and vote in person. Like, we know that the pieces are there. We're just possibly decades off from being able to vote. At least in the United States, it's going to take a long time with how slow moving we are. But yeah, really excited to see that happen in my lifetime. I hope it happens in my lifetime.
Yeah, and it's like not that easy as one probably thinks, because there are some anonymity questions. So you really want to know the aggregate, but you don't want to know how everyone voted, and you don't want that information to be ever public. So that, like, implementing that in the perfect way would actually be quite challenging, although I think not impossible. So it's just that a naive solution, I don't know, counter on Ethereum, right? A naive solution wouldn't actually work, because it would be not anonymous, and also like one could observe what the results are turning into, so they could change their actions accordingly. That's not necessarily what you want. Ideally, you want a black box. People vote, nobody knows who voted for whom, and then all of a sudden there is a result. So that's kind of what you would ideally want.
Michael, going back to Curve Tokenomics, any lessons that you can share, just having experienced and built all that you have built, any lessons for those that are designing tokens for the future? I know a few things that I think can become a standard are, I really love the retro rewards that you guys and Uniswap did. That just felt like right. The Uniswap ones were insane to everyone, because it was going so far back that I think no one really saw that coming. And then what you talked about with rewarding people for voting, that's important, making it gasless or costing them little to nothing. Vesting, I mean, if anything we learned this summer, what happens when you don't vest rewards, or you don't vest tokens for a team, you can see some pretty ugly situations. But anything else that you can share in terms of lessons building Curve?
Yeah, I guess one thing is we wanted to have everything done smoothly. There is no token release, no large token release happening at any time. So you have you don't have a situation when somebody all of a sudden starts owning a bunch of liquid tokens. But one thing, so that one was good, I think. But another thing is that we started circulating supply from zero, and maybe it actually, the initial circulating supply should be adjusted based on, I don't know, on hype or whatever. So that is probably something important to consider for other projects. And whoever gets this initial circulating supply, I don't know, early users are probably good. So yeah, I think that's one thought.
I've got one more question for you. Tell me a team or a few teams that you really admire in DeFi. Like, what are the DeFi applications that that you use regularly, or maybe you just have like a deep respect for them as fellow builders?
Right. Yeah. So I think I like when teams move fast, and I think from projects which move fast, I would say that Avi or Synthetics are pretty good at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or maybe from like more recent ones, YEarn is good, and YEarn is interesting in a way that it's like fully community driven. So it's like, fully like 100% community owned, and that's a very interesting experiment. I'm not aware of any other project which is like fully driven by community apart from Bitcoin. But to be honest, Bitcoin doesn't move anywhere. So
That's right. Well, hey, thanks so much for being able to join me today. This was so interesting. I really did not fully understand the way that the voting worked with the V curve. So I think it's crystal clear. It's you lock up curve, and if you do it for 4 years, that's 1 vote, and if you lock it up for 2 years, that's half a vote. So that should be clear to everyone. Michael, anything else that you'd like to leave folks with? Like anything else that is you think is really important for those that are using and building in DeFi?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think I would just emphasize once again the safety of what you build, because like that's really something which needs quite a good time being spent on.
Michael, do you think we could start to use shield mining is just getting started with Nexus? Do you think that can be a powerful tool?
Yeah, that's a powerful tool. The thing with Nexus is that you, because of the way it works, you can have only like a limited cover per project.
Right.
And I think it's good to find something more scalable than that. But shield mining is a great thing. It should be done. But it also requires like some more capacity of insurances, and also it's probably hard from regulatory perspective, but dumb contract insurance for smart contracts would be good, because remember when I think Open had a problem where money would have been lost, but it was covered by Nexus, so it was everybody was covered at the end because of reinsurance. But if you have a normal dumb contract insurance for smart contracts, you are not relying on smart contracts to make sure that smart contracts don't lead to a loss.
Yeah. There's so much room for us to expand with the way smart contract insurance works, and I think right now that pie is so small. There's definitely a few new projects that are launching. I haven't really followed Cover closely, but it's one of them. I know it's a name that I know I need to get more familiar with and kind of learn about. But I mean, insurance, reinsurance, these are things that as they grow larger, it allows a team to launch new DeFi applications with protection for their users, and it mirrors what works in the legacy world. It mirrors what works in traditional finance. But Michael, thanks so much for your time. Again, this was super fun. If anyone has been living under a rock and missed all of this, you want to go to curve.fi. There's tons of pools. You actually can also go to Zapper.fi /invest, which is where you can zap into any of the Curve pools. So that's an easier way to get liquidity in and out of those pools. And other than that, we'll have Leighton Cusack, who's the founder of Pool Together. He'll be on tomorrow with us. But look for this at tv.zapper.fi so you can watch the full episode there. And then we'll chop this up into some highlights just to kind of share more of the cool insights that Michael shared with us today. So Michael, thank you, and have a great day. Please tell Charlie I said hi, and congrats to all the cool work you guys are doing.
All right, thank you.
Thanks so much.